All right, guys, I got Jon Hinderliter here with me. Jon, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm good, good. So, Jon, you are a U.S. Coast Guard veteran. You spent a lot of time in the Coast Guard. What did you do? How long were you in the Coast Guard, and kind of what did you do?
So I spent 20 years in the Coast Guard Reserves, 4 of those years after 9/11 on active duty. The bulk of my time in the Coast Guard was at the United States Transportation Command in Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. And so the Transportation Command moves everything in the military. They're the logistics hub. So people, bullets, airplanes, whatever has to be moved, they're responsible for doing it. And all services, Army, Navy, Air Force, and even the Coast Guard, need something moved to some other place. And some services can do that move 100% on their own. Some services need the support of larger logistical hubs to be able to do that move. And so my responsibilities there had varied throughout the 20 years that I was there. And I had multiple roles from protocol type of event specialist activities to actually working in the logistics centers that they had to essentially providing an admin responsibility for other Coast Guard personnel that were assigned to that unit. So it was a good time, good service, and I retired in 2018, and I do miss the people very much. Miss the mission, miss the people every day.
Yeah, I think that's something that I miss about being in the Air Force was the mission, kind of the purpose. You didn't have to find those things; they were readily available for you. So, a little bit different of a challenge being on the outside. I retired in 2017 after they medically retired me, and yeah, I miss it. I miss it at times, and there's times where I'm like, okay, I'm glad I'm not. I'm glad I'm not there right now.
Well, I certainly got to the point where I would say to people, the music is playing a different tune,
Yep.
and just there were things change all the time, and you have to get used to the idea. I think in the military of being a little bit uncomfortable every single day,
Hmm.
or uncomfortable in relationship to different types of changes, but eventually you get to a point where it's like, I think I'm good. I think I've done my time. I think I've gone as far or gone as far in my service as I'm able to go. And some people are okay with it. Some people are not okay with it. I was okay with it. I was actually for 3 years prior to it, I was counting down the months to my retirement. And they're like, "Oh no, don't you want to stay in until to get 30 years?" It's like, no, I'm good. 20 was fine. Give me my retirement. I'm good.
So what was it like being in the Coast Guard? Because Coast Guard falls under the like the Homeland brand.
Department of Homeland
Yeah,
Security.
not so much
You
the
know,
DoD. So what is that? What is that kind of like? How is it kind of different?
so when I started, and I started, in the late 90s, we were actually underneath the Department of Transportation.
Mm,
Coast Guard's one of those services. They've been moved around, to a few different departments, and purposely kept from outside the Department of Defense. And that allows us to have a maritime law enforcement role that neither that the Navy can't do, in terms of law enforcement.
okay.
And so there's that component of there's the historical and kind of regulation piece of why we don't exist underneath the other services, or why we don't exist inside the Navy or inside the Department of Defense. I think the part, when we moved into the Department of Homeland Security in after 2000, after 9/11, and that department was formed, I think there was a lot of hopes and dreams. Here is this new department, here is this new expanded global war on terrorism, piece to all of it, that was added to the larger scope for the Coast Guard. Um, and so I think there was a lot of hope for increasing in funding, increasing of attention, increases of all these kinds of different types of things. And yeah, I'm probably sure to some extent that there was some of that, but it also came with, you also got added to a department that had other entities underneath it that had their own
Yeah.
political
Here comes
issues.
the
Uh,
bureaucracy. Yeah.
yeah, here comes the bureaucracy, and so where generally speaking, the armed forces don't get as much political shrapnel thrown at them, in a lot of ways, and I think that that was not the case, not so much for the Coast Guard,
Hmm.
but so much as other units or other entities underneath the Department of Homeland Security. They got a lot of shrapnel thrown at them, and so there were times that the funding wouldn't be there, or funding might lapse, or other types of things that would come along that wouldn't impact other services. Um, so there's that political piece to it. But having served in a joint command for the majority of my entire time, the one, you wouldn't be able to really know that we were outside the Department of Defense, how well we worked with everybody
Hmm.
else. And if we needed something, or we needed those things, again, you wouldn't have known that really kind of working in that mission. The
So,
other side of the coin is the funding is just way different, because
yeah.
the Navy and the Air Force and all those services, even the Marines get way more funding than the Coast Guard ever saw in their entire time. And so there's just those differences of funding levels, and that has a downstream impact on just what we're able to do, or what the service is able to do.
Sure. So, a large amount of time in joint assignments with the Coast Guard. But
Mhm.
now, and for quite a few years, you've been the director of marketing and communications at University College there in St. Louis, correct?
Yes. So, as a reservist, you have your reserve job, and when I was on active duty after 9/11, one of the things that I decided to do at that point was, I had the education benefits. I used them. I got my degree, at night, and I went on to eventually get a master's degree. But at one point, as I got married, the decisions in conversations with my wife, I probably could have stayed on active duty for forever and a day.
Hmm.
It was just that time and that environment, after 9/11. But I realized if I don't go out and use this degree, it's just going to be a piece of paper on the wall.
Yep.
And I wanted to go out there and I wanted to apply my degree. My degree was in mass communications with an emphasis on advertising. So I wanted to go out and I wanted to do advertising, marketing, communications. I wanted to apply an interest in an area that I had. And so for about the past 15 years, I've been doing, marketing communications at different levels and different roles at different places. For the last 5 of those years, I have been at Washington University in St. Louis. That's the university that I work at, and then within that university, I work for essentially the division school called University College.
Okay. Fair
So the way
enough.
to think about that is, in any big university, any large university, there's the university itself, and then in that university there might be the school of business,
Hmm.
or the school of, or the college of arts and sciences, or a school of fine arts. And so within any of that, there's these lower levels, just like in the military there were divisions and wings, and different
Yeah. Right.
ways that the military was kind of aligned and focused, and different work that was done in different areas. Same thing within a university. There's divisions and schools and levels and centers and departments, and you just have a specific role. And so where I'm at in University College, the focus is on continuing education, adult education, providing those individuals that either want to come back to college for a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, or just in pursuit of a certificate or lifelong learning, that they can come back and they can pursue that at a pace, at a schedule, that they choose, or that they want to focus in on in terms of what they want to learn. And so we offer that kind of flexibility. We offer that kind of adult learning environment, that flexibility for evenings, online, of course. Obviously big for any school.
Yeah.
But we have an online component as well, and online was everywhere, obviously, of course, after the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of turned your passion for marketing and your degree and your education in marketing into a very good selling book that has won multiple awards, which I think I've said it before, but again, congratulations, because it seems like every time I log into LinkedIn and I see something you've posted, oh, won another award, and I'm like, man, he is just bagging up the awards, man. Kudos to you, because I think that's really, really cool.
Thank you so much. It's very humbling, in a lot of ways. So after I retired from the reserves, one of the things I thought to, I know I'd always kind of wanted to write a book. And after I retired from the reserves, I was like, well, it's either now or never. I had done a master's, program, and I'd done a master's thesis, and
Right.
so, I have the technical expertise and the knowledge to be able to do something, but it's like that time was a key factor.
Yeah.
That the time to be able to do that, and so I had this idea. This really is really not so much an idea as it's an observation.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's an observation.
And this real observation that really became a working theory that I kind of put out throughout the book is that the era of marketing has really seen this change.
Mm-hmm.
And as marketers and communicators and we see it in advertising, and you even see it outside of all of that, is people talk about content. Content is king. You should be doing content every single day. And really, my observation was that it's really not that case anymore. And so, oh gosh, I am so sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Of course, you have an alarm go off right in the middle of everything. And so the title of my book, "The Death of Content is King," really is that kind of that premise of there has been this paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And what is that paradigm shifted towards? It's really about data. And if we look at, the dominant platforms right now in marketing, communications, and advertising, where all the money goes, where does the attention go? Where does the money go? Okay. And the most dominant platforms, Google, Facebook, Amazon, these platforms don't really create content.
No.
As their way of essentially grabbing user attention in a lot of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and making their piece. Really, for them, it's the data.
Yeah.
The data is what they've used, and the data algorithms, they creating personalized experiences for your search, personalized experiences for your social feeds, personalized shopping experiences on Amazon, down to personalized pricing.
They get so much of my money.
And it's not just them. It's not just those dominant ones.
Yeah.
If you start pulling out of that, and you look at Netflix, you look at companies called Fanatics, and Disney or Walmart or a lot of these other companies, they have made huge pivots and huge focuses and huge investments in their data-driven operations.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we really, as marketers, advertisers, or communicating professionals, or people trying to build services or platforms or organizations that are trying to attract consumers, to pay a service or buy a product, how can we really say, well, it's going to be all about the content?
Yeah, that's hard now.
It's hard now. And so, it took me it took me about a year to write the book. And I have over, I think the biggest thing about it was not just Jon's opinion that this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I took the time to do a ton of research, and I
yeah.
include all that research in the book. I have over 200 cited sources.
Oh yeah, just a massive amount. Every page, I was like, wow. I was totally impressed. It was, and I don't want to say this in a like a negative way, but it was almost like a textbook. It was just loaded with information. And then when I found out you were at a university, I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. Like this was a huge research project for him that he turned into a book on a great premise and a great idea. And I was like, wow, this is heavy. Like I had to read through it like several times, flipping pages, going back. Like, did I understand that? Like there was so much to it, but it makes so much sense, like what you're saying, because Facebook used to be, when it first came out, was a social media site. You posted a picture, you posted a comment, and then people replied or liked it, and that was kind of the premise of it. And now it's automated timelines. It's targeted ads. So like every single person's experience on the platform, whether on the app or online, is totally different. It'll never be the same. It's almost like it never repeats itself, even for the individuals, let alone a group of people. And it's just it's exploded, and how they've exploited data to do that is almost crazy, because it's like I can talk, like me and you could talk about like furniture right now. Like I really need a new leather chair. And then when we get off this phone call, I go on Facebook, I'll have recommendations for leather chairs.
It doesn't have to always be kind of thought about as like a creepy way of how all that
Sure.
works. It's the algorithms are so intelligent now.
Right.
That concept of AI
Yeah.
really is that predictive machine learning element to be able to say, well, the reason why you're looking for that, you're probably in a market for a couch, is because they figured out, well, you live in a certain zip code, you likely have a certain size house, or
Yeah.
based on your demographics or based on your purchase history. I mean, there's all so much data that exists, and that they're able to kind of correlate and say, well, the odds are he wants or is looking for or possibly shopping and considering X.
Mm-hmm.
A good example of that, I mean, you can go and look at your Google your Google ad profile. This is essentially a profile that Google has that they make available for every user of their platform. And you can look at your ad profile and you can kind of see, what does Google know about you
Really?
in terms of age ranges, education levels, and interests. Are you a Star Trek fan? Are you a Star Wars fan? And it even gets more like, have you connected to the platform on an Android device, or have you connected on a platform on an iPhone device? It would even, on my screen, I'm able to kind of see what device, what device do I have, because it knows what device I've used to connect with it, because your phone has a device ID.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's able to tell from that your cell phone is a certain amount of years old.
Wow.
Okay, and what carrier you used. So that all of that data can be combined and segmented and organized in such a way that, if they wanted to target me with a Star Trek celebrity promoting their new flip phone that looks like a tricorder, on the Verizon network that I'm on, and because my phone is eligible for an upgrade, they can offer in a special upgrade deal. They can have a message that is that customized, because all of that data is available for me.
And it's so incredible too, because it's like, it's just thinking about it, and thinking about how it's evolved, because, years ago when we were getting ads for stuff that was tailored to us, but maybe at the wrong time. Like, trying to sell flannels in July. I love
Hmm.
flannel shirts, but not in July. But it seems like it's changed so much that I don't even have to look it up. I don't have to look it up. I don't even have to have a conversation with my wife about it. It's just like it knows me well enough to know, hey, come September, let's start showing Jeff ads on jeans and flannel shirts and boots. And it's like, wow, it's so crazy how data has, like what you said, data is king now. Content, posting pictures and content and captions is not it anymore. Trying to stay caught up, you got to stay caught up with the data.
And I think that really the biggest point that I've made in the book is, it would have been easy to actually say, data is the new king of marketing. But one of the things that you start to realize is you can have all the data in the world,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't organize it correctly, if you don't use it
Yeah.
correctly, it's going to fail you.
What are you doing with it?
What are you doing with it? You could have, a ton of data about your consumer. You could have a very complete, accurate database of 10,000 of your last customers. But if the last piece of data that you have there is 12 months old, how reliable is it?
Right.
I think really what it comes down to, what makes these platforms powerful today, and they'll be powerful tomorrow, and they'll be powerful for a very long time, is that users, us as the consumers, are coming back as users to these platforms and using them again and again and again. We're continuously providing our data to them. because we're making a choice. Basically, we're voting with our voice, as I kind of say.
Mm-hmm.
And really what we're creating is not so much data as the new king, but really a data democracy. Because people can go and they can take their data and they can really kind of taking their interactions, their activity, their passive, their passive attention, their active activity, and they can go to another platform. You see that with
Yeah.
young adults right now in TikTok,
Yep.
or people could start looking and using DuckDuckGo as a search engine, or Walmart Plus, because Walmart's just come out with that type of piece. We can go to other platforms and take our activities and take our pieces over there, and that really makes us, the consumer, really the driver of a lot of of this effort, and it forces the platforms to be better about how they use the data that we give them,
Mm-hmm.
so that the product becomes better, or a product or service becomes better. It forces the advertisers, the marketers, and the advertisers that are using the data they're getting, and they're advertising on these platforms, to be better at their jobs.
Yeah, they've gotten
Because the
better at it.
worst thing you could the worst thing you could do is I always say in marketing, right message to the right person at the right time. You mess up on any one of those, and 99 times out of 100, you've lost that potential customer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we can do now as marketers using data, is to be able to deliver all of that right message, right time, right person, but also we can measure, did it work?
Right.
And in the more traditional marketing elements, even and in the early days of digital, there that wasn't the tracking pieces, the monitoring of the pieces wasn't really as possible in the moment. So you could put a billboard campaign up, you could put a radio campaign out, you could put a Super Bowl ad, and you put all this traditional media out there, and you don't know if that's driving the consumer or not to purchase your product.
Yeah.
With digital ads, you can actually see the activity related to all of that, and that can make for much smarter marketers.
And it's crazy to think somebody could run the same Super Bowl ad today that they did 15 years ago when digital was first really breaking out. And the difference would be, back then, they essentially had to wait until sales figures came around to see if it worked. Now they can log on by the end of the day and be like, oh, we had 5,000 clicks on that ad. Same commercial.
Oh, same commercial. And you're seeing that activity about how brands and agencies are adapting to this new reality in almost every facet. You think about, kind of even the Super Bowl ads, as you mentioned. Well, now Super Bowl ads are coming out days, before.
Oh, yeah.
They're being launched on YouTube, and they're being put out there to try to capture some early buzz,
Mm-hmm.
or the ad itself becomes a springboard to a website, or a springboard to another piece, then that has even more elements, to it. And what happens there is, now if the consumer follows, and follows that action, again, they may not be ready to buy something, but that puts them in what's called a remarketing funnel, where it's, I went to go look at those that pair of shoes, that pair of nice boots that I wanted to buy, and now those boots are following me across the internet, and now they're on sale because I didn't shop and I didn't buy them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more that can be done, and a lot more time and attention that can be given to the consumer, as a result of just all the changes that have happened in marketing.
Well, even, like you said, like it went from, hey, you just need to get in front of the consumer's face, to now you're in front of the consumer's face. You have to stay in front of their face until they execute. So like I declined upgrading something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but they immediately sent me a message. Would you change your mind if we offered you 50% off? And it was like, so that follow-up was instant. So
Mm-hmm.
you could change a no into a yes real quick and change somebody's mind by just getting back. But they used that data, and they needed that to kind of come back around, which was cool. I still didn't say yes to it because I just didn't want to. But it was the fact that they had the ability to follow up. Like, they weren't going to just let me walk around so easily. And to your point, it's just about getting back in front, because you never know what it could springboard into. And you've seen so many different partnerships too, like, with the Super Bowl. Everything the Super Bowl does, it's sponsored or brought to you in part by, or, and so days before, they're teasing, like, everybody knows to look for the Budweiser commercial at the Super Bowl because it's always like one of the top ones. But even Budweiser 3 or 4 days early is saying, sneak peek at the Super Bowl commercial. And they're legendary Super Bowl commercials. These are the ones that people know. Everybody knows Budweiser Super Bowl commercial. But now even they're doing it, and they don't necessarily have to, but you almost have to get on the train or get left at the station.
And that's, I make it a point in the book. It's, do you want to be the last blockbuster in the country?
That's good.
And because that idea of getting on board with the data, if you look at the very early days of Netflix, and here was this, essentially DVD, mail and home service that Blockbuster tried to buy, by the way.
Oh.
And then they backed down from buying it.
That was a mistake.
Top 10 business mistakes probably ever.
Oh, yeah.
But they looked at what Netflix is able to do is say, okay, we have this huge warehouse full of all these DVDs and all these different pieces. Obviously, of course, you as the watcher, the consumer, the viewer, as you sign up for that service, you're encouraged to put a few things in your queue, and those things can start coming to you. But what happens after you get through the new releases?
Yeah.
And this is the problem that Blockbuster really never was able to capitalize on. Is you walk through a video rental store, and they got the walls and walls of new releases, and hopefully they got the one you want in stock, so you can walk out with that. But what happens when you've seen all the new releases and you're in, and you're waiting for something, or you've seen the ones you wanted to see, and you're waiting for something else, but there's all these hundreds of other movies that they had in the store. And yeah, sure, they had the genres labeled, but then it was kind of up to you to go figure out, well, maybe there was this other movie that was released 4 or 5 years ago with the same actor or the same, director that I might be interested in. And what Netflix was able to do was to take all of those different pieces of data, like, people that watched or that like to have Kevin Spacey in a movie, people that, like movies directed by David Finch, people that liked the old BBC House of Cards. And they were able to correlate all of that data and be able to determine, well, you know what, we can develop the House of Cards show directed by David Finch or produced by David Finch and starring Kevin Spacey on House of Cards. And we can release that, and we know we're going to have so many people already on the platform that are going to want to put that show in their queue to watch. So every time you're rating something, when it used to be the star system, now it's the thumbs up, thumbs down system, all of those different elements are being used to determine, well, what should I recommend to you next? Because what Netflix wants is for you to stay a Netflix subscriber month after month.
Right.
And so whether you're talking about new content that they develop or catalog content that they have, they've got to figure out a way, well, how can I recommend stuff to Jeff that Jeff wants to watch? And then how can I reference stuff to Joe that lives across the street from Jeff? And so on, and make it, because not everyone's going to have your taste in movies.
Right.
How can we curate a feed of movies that are unique to all of that? And they use data to be able to achieve that.
It's a total customized entertainment and shopping experience. Like, your life is almost completely customized now, from the minute you walk into a store too. I mean, even stores are going digital and have digital things now. And that's why the movie video rental stores and even libraries libraries and bookstores have died. Barnes and Noble survived, but even they cut stores because, people said, I can read my book on my iPad, my iPhone, my Kindle, my this and that, and I can take a book with me everywhere and it doesn't take up any more space. So it just turned into this massive explosion of data. What was it like for you telling people the idea of the book? Because when you hear the death of content is king, people kind of go, what are you talking about? Content is all I absorb. How is it dead? What was it like explaining, like, no, it's not that it's dead, it's that there's been a shift, like you said.
There's either, it's interesting. That's a great question, by the way. I think about it, some of the response, and I think in the content marketing realm, there's just that silence. They don't want to recognize that because it's the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, and I respect it, but I almost want to say you need to read the book, because I'm not basically saying that stop doing content altogether. I'm saying the kind of the spray and pray aspect, the um we're going to do this and we're going to get you the number one search result on Google, and by doing all of this free content, or we're going to help make this particular campaign go viral. That's just not going to work anymore. And I think the reality is the more professional brands and professional agencies and marketing professionals that have been doing this at such a high level, they get it, they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I get that kind of response more from them after they read the book. And that's the biggest thing I try to encourage, is for people to read it, because there's a lot that you can pull out of this to help you understand what's happening with your audiences, or what's happening with your marketing campaigns, or what's not happening with your marketing campaigns, and ways to apply new techniques. It's not just saying what was used to be done over there doesn't work anymore. Good luck. It was, this has changed.
Yeah.
Here's the evidence and here's how it's changing. But if you follow, certain data driven types of practices and thought processes and new ways of approaching things, this is how you can adapt and thrive in this new, more data driven, type of environment. And I think the power of recommendation is, of course, always going to be, a huge part of all of that. And I think that's been more than anything else. But I understand on the content marketing side, with more content marketing professionals, there's a tough time with what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But but many of them are very respectful for the idea that, well, I'm going to give it a chance, and then here's the things that I really like. But I've rarely met the person who's like, oh man, no, you're 100% wrong, and then here's the 10 reasons why you're 100% wrong. I've not had to experience that. I don't mind that. I'd rather have the conversation.
Sure.
Agree to disagree. That's fine. And just gonna go from there.
Well, and you still have to have the content. So to your
Yeah.
point, it's not that it's died, it's that the data has become even so more relevant and more important for continued growth with content, because content is kind of one dimensional. It's a visual thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
appeasing to the eyes or the ears, and that's kind of its purpose. But then what's the data behind it? Because I can post something on my Instagram and I can get 150 likes, but then tomorrow morning I post something at the same time but different, it's a different subject or whatever it may be, different graphic, and it gets 15 likes.
Mm-hmm.
But it might get more views, so like it might get 7,000 views but only 15 likes, because so it's being seen, it's not being liked. Whereas yesterday, I had 5,000 views but I had 150 likes. So it's not that the content was bad, it's that it didn't appeal to people right then, right now. Like you said earlier, you have to hit all three of those: right place, right time. You have to nail it. So it's not that content has died, it's that it's even more so almost kind of like walking on eggshells. It's tough.
It's tough, if when we think about all this stuff, we basically have to play the algorithm.
Yes.
And if you're playing the algorithm's game, you're never going to win.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't know, because you don't work at Facebook and you don't work at Google and you don't work at Amazon, what are the core ingredients to their algorithm? What are the core pieces? And So you don't know those things, and they can make tweaks to the algorithm, tweaks they announce, changes they announce, things they don't announce, tests or experiments that they do. And then all of a sudden, the strategy that worked for you in the summer of, or I'm sorry, the fall of 2019 no longer work in the summer of 2020
Mm-hmm.
because so many things have changed, or so many aspects have changed, and that's even taking out of out account of it the pandemic and how consumer activity changed post pandemic.
Yep.
But there's that element of there's so many secrets there that if you're trying to play that game, you're going to lose. Versus if you understand who your audience is because you're looking at data analytics, data segmentation, data pieces that you might have in a CRM, or however you have your data, and you're looking at that data and you're understanding, this is the type of content that my consumer, my audience is going to react to. And then you're able to adjust your message to be more personalized, dynamically personalized is one of the core concepts I have in the book, is of how to take your content and dynamically change it based on a few different types of criteria. Again, based on the data, because the Super Bowl is one of those national events. We mentioned the Super Bowl a few different times. It's one of those national events that's almost global in a lot of ways, but national,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people watching it from all different parts. And it's not just the two teams that are playing.
Oh yeah.
That it's only really those audiences, the people that like those two teams. That one's a national type of piece. But you look at what a company like Fanatics is able to do in the sports apparel area, where they're able to say, okay, all right, it might be the St. Louis Rams, or not. I'm sorry, St. Louis Rams no longer in the St. Louis Rams. That's how bad my football references are. And I used to be a bigger football fan, but it might be the Patriots versus whoever. Okay. Do they still play Miami? I think the Patriots still play Miami. Maybe they're still in the same conference. Again,
Yeah.
this is how bad my sports references are these days. And so you have those two audiences. Now, let's say somewhere in the course of the game, the first string quarterback on on the Patriots side gets injured, and he's out of the game. And now you got this second string quarterback that no one's ever really heard of before, and he goes and he scores 7 touchdowns in that game. You're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Who's ever heard of this guy?
Mm-hmm.
I want to, and my son was watching the game. My son thought it was this great game. I want to go down and I want to go buy the jersey. But if you go to a sports apparel store, you're not going to find the second string quarterback, for the Patriots
No.
that day.
No, you're not.
But what Fanatics is able to do is Fanatics is able to see the signals because they're observing the game.
Mm-hmm.
They're able to see what's happening in the game. They're watching it, and they're able to have a mock-up jersey created
Yep.
of that player for that team and send that out to everyone who's a fan of that team that they have email list wise or text message wise,
Mm-hmm.
and create a prominent place on the Fanatics website, but also Fanatics has license with all the different sports teams, on the sports website, so that awesome, that's great, that's amazing. Now I can look at my email and I can see that wonderful player who just got those 7 touchdowns. So now I can go buy the jersey. There's no friction. I don't got to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't got to go look for it. It's just been created.
Yeah, they're selling the product before they even have it. I mean,
exactly.
I mean that the Patriots could have lost the game, but the hero quarterback, the company can still sell the jerseys for, which is crazy because years ago, if your team lost, like, no, you didn't go out and go, oh, well, we lost the Super Bowl, I'm going to go buy a jersey. Not a lot of people did that. People were like, you know what? I'm going to go drink my face off, or I don't want to talk about sports for the next 2 weeks because my team lost the Super Bowl. Now, if one player, like you said, has a really good game, win or lose, you can still sell the hero. And they're selling a product they don't even have yet, which on the business side, being a business major, to me, that's a huge return on investment. I can make one mock jersey, take a handful of professional photos of it, digitize it, put it online in emails, text messages, everything like you said. It costs me pennies on the dollar to do that. And then the jersey sales coming in, the first jersey probably immediately takes care of it, if not within a handful of jerseys. I mean, we're talking less than a dozen, I bet, covers the cost of doing what you just did. And then everything after that is just massive amounts of profit, even for the losing football team.
Exactly. And they've never had to do a whole separate ad campaign around that winning athlete.
Right.
Because they already had the audience. They knew who the audience was. They knew what the audience liked. They were able to customize a dynamic product for them and send that content out because it was personalized, because it was localized, because people were familiar with it, and be able to push that out instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the Netflixes, of the worlds, or the major sports bro companies. I mean, I think I'm seeing more data driven types of stuff in other ways, and even in physical locations. I use an example in the book, and I still have this experience every time I walk into Lowe's now, and I'm looking through Lowe's, and there are times where I'm trying to find a product on the shelf, and I'm trying to, I Google Lowe's, and then I look for that particular product. What aisle is this on? What shelf is this on? And Lowe's website will tell you if it's in stock in this store, and this is the location of all of this. I'll go home that afternoon, and I'll get an email from Lowe's saying, "Hey, are you still interested in that product category?
Mm-hmm.
We saw that you were searching for it. Are you still interested in it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go out and buy it?"
Yeah.
And they're basically capitalizing on the fact that here they had a seller, they had a buyer, they had a buyer in the store. They had a buyer in the store who was looking for, a particular product category. They're not far enough yet to know in terms of the data connection
Mm-hmm.
between retail and digital of whether or not I bought it while I was in the store. But they can certainly ask me the question just in case.
Yeah.
Hey, did you buy this, or are you still looking for things in this category? And again, that can definitely be another way to pick up a sale, because that email doesn't really cost them a whole lot.
No.
And there's times that they've been able to do that it's not always about I'm logged in.
Yeah.
I'm logged into the Lowe's website. It's just I've got to the Lowe's website through Google, and Lowe's made the connection between my device ID, my search history, my purchase history, my email address, because I use the military discount through Lowe's.
Yep.
So they have my email address, they have my phone number. They're able to kind of push, put all of these pieces together, put the puzzle together, and provide me more personalized, dynamic types of communications based on my activity.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be creepy to some people. Sometimes it's not. I tell that story to some people, and they're like, "Oh my God, I would never want that to happen to me. I don't want them to know what I'm doing in this category or that." It's like, well, they already know.
Already know.
It's just whether or not
Yeah.
they've made you aware of it or not.
Yeah.
But I think, we've gotten spoiled sometimes as consumers how much this stuff is personalized.
Yeah.
But then there's this other side of the equation that's privacy, and my privacy is different. My privacy boundary is different from your privacy boundary, probably.
Sure.
As much as it's different from our significant others or others, and different regions and different areas and different backgrounds. Everyone has a different conception of what that is. There's now legal conceptions of what privacy is. But I think that there's that, like, do we really want to go back to the kind of the less data driven eras of marketing,
Oh, yeah.
where the ads weren't as personalized, the ads weren't as intuitive, the ads weren't as well delivered? I don't think any of us want to really go back to that, because I think once you start experiencing it, studies have already shown that people are like, no, I prefer the more personalized approach.
Well, and companies on the business side stayed caught up with this concept, and they realize there's another part of the convenience factor to this. So as convenient as it is to see ads and text messages and emails and all that stuff about products you're interested in, it doesn't do much unless you can buy it. And some people will still Like Amazon seemed to do it. One click buying. Once you had all your information and stuff on Amazon's website, you could buy something in one click. Click, boom, it was done. You didn't have to think about it. So it eliminated the thinking twice about your purchase. Do I need to buy this? Do I really want it? Is it nice to have? Is it necessary? Well, all that went out the window. If they could show it to you again and you could do a one-click purchase, verify your information, and boom, it was done, they were capturing sales like a whole nother. They played on that convenience factor and said, if we're going to make it convenient for them to see it, we have to make it convenient for them to buy it, or we have a 50-50 shot of closing a sale. Well, now, like you said, you go into Lowe's, you shop, you look around for stuff, you don't necessarily buy anything. You go home, you go home to an email from Lowe's saying, are you sure you wanted to skip that lawnmower? Or you order your new lamp today and we'll ship it to your home for free. No shipping, and you can go, yeah, well, you know what? Let's do it. Click, boom, and it'll be here in 3 days.
I think the biggest plus of data, that the biggest aspect of data that data has been able to provide, and that these platforms have taken advantage of, over the years, is lowering the barrier, creating frictionless experiences.
Yes.
In terms of your search results, in terms of how your social feed works, I don't have to look through my social feed and look through 15 posts from 15 people that I could care less to get to the 4 or 5 pieces of content that I'm more or less guaranteed to engage with. The same thing with Amazon. I don't want to go and it's the winter time and I'm looking at, pictures of lawnmowers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking about lawn care at this point. My lawn's dead.
Yeah.
That frictionless experience, and they take it to a much higher level is, again, the problem with the online stores used to be, well, I have to wait for it to get here.
Yeah.
And now Amazon and Walmart and all of them, same day, next day, 2-day, all free.
Yeah.
That's where that's the world that we're in now. It's so frictionless. It's like, well, I'm in the Barnes and Noble, I might as well buy the book. But then there's that other part of that same brain that you've almost, that they've kind of trained you in some ways. I almost want to say, not that they focused on that kind of training. It's like, well, let me check what this price of this is on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
you're
buy this
100%
book right
correct.
here. I could buy this book right here.
Yeah.
Or I could, look at it and I could know it can almost be in my at my house the next day.
Yep.
Or within a few days.
Well, but it's changed.
And there's power in that.
It's changed our thought on waiting, though. Like normally, I'd be like, no, I need it. I'm going to go buy it at the store now. I'll spend the 30 minutes running downtown and doing it. Now, I'm like, well, I'll just put it off till tomorrow because it'll be here tomorrow.
I'm a Prime member. I'm just going to put it on my cart and it'll be here. It's we're Walmart Plus members, and it's like we'll have that delivered to us, the next day, or schedule our delivery time for our various different pieces, and then because they have all of this data about our activity, they're able to say, okay, well, we notice you've selected a grocery delivery slot for next Friday. Here are 15 items that you've been adding to your cart last time. Do you want to add all 15 of these items to your cart the next time?
Yeah.
Yep. Making that repeat purchase behavior. Amazon's got subscribe and save. Amazon's got their grocery pieces. So all, smart retailers have figured out this way of essentially saying, how can, we've got these membership pieces, but also how can we almost create subscription style businesses within all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, that's it's next level.
It is.
And we're all experiencing it, but it's next level pieces for use of data.
Yeah.
And I think that, whether we're talking you as the individual, the author, the podcaster, all the different types of pieces, you running a business, you say, well, I'm not Google, I'm not Facebook, and I'm not these. Well, that's true. You don't have all of these resources or all of these people, but the data's still out there.
Yep.
You can still ask your audience for their information. You want to give them something in return, or promise something in return, or sell them something in relation, but you can still ask and get information from them. And you can still use that information to have a better understanding of who your audience is, and then to be able to provide better whether we're talking better content, we're talking, more personalized content because of the data, or we're talking a better, more personalized product as a result of the data. You can still do that as an organization of one, or an organization of 100, or tens of thousands. And I think we see that all the time with startups and those types of companies, is that they've become, from the very beginning, more data driven, growth hacking techniques, and that really took off in marketing, and has been taking off in marketing for several years, just focusing on growth. But it's really focusing on taking a combination of the product and the data, and the awareness of the audience, and building the best types of campaigns and efforts and tactics and strategies to help grow their businesses. It can be done at any level. I can guarantee that. Even as an author myself, when I first published my book, you know, there was, yes, I had my email list, but that was only going to sell a certain amount of copies. I knew from the very beginning that in order for my book to be successful, it has to reach new audiences. But it can't just be any audience. It needs to be essentially the audience that I know is going to be the ones that are going to want to buy the book, or want to give the book a go. And then I'm able to kind of then tailor, who am I reaching out to, who do I want to talk to, whose calendar do I want to get on to try to pitch the idea of, let me do a workshop, or let me do this or that, to help better that piece. Even so far as you talked about at the beginning, the awards that my book has won. And I've been very blessed to win several awards for my book in marketing categories and social media categories, etc. I used a service called Award Pro, that essentially is there for authors to be able to say, well, you put your book information. But sorry, Book Award Pro is I think is the full name of the service. And I put the information in about my book, and it's like a subscription fee. And then they go out and they found, here are the different book contests that have categories where your book can enter. And so I was using data, and they're using data and those types of pieces to determine, well, here are the different book categories and places where I can go put in into these competitions and submit my book for these competitions. So there's data on the front end of all of that. But I also know that in order to get in front of people that don't know me from Adam, I have to have that kind of that third party validation, that other piece of somebody else is saying that my book is good, and not just my book reviews. And the awards are a way to do that. And I went so far as, after every single one of those LinkedIn posts and those Twitter posts and those I would post those on my Facebook as well. After every single one of those posts, I'd then go into the Amazon sales data page, and I could track all the charts in relationship to how many, essentially, where all the spikes were, and how many copies were sold, or or infer in some ways with sales data rank how many copies were sold. But then I'm able to see, well, what kind of spikes do I have? And that third party validation then helped the algorithm be able to, people liked that kind of content. They were like, oh, this is great, awesome, congratulations, John. I got in front of more people as a result of all of that. And on average, each of those awards created, a 700% or higher spike in my sales data for those weeks.
Wow.
So I'm able to know, it's like, okay, I got my first award, then I watch the long tail of the data afterwards, and I'm like, all right, well, it's definitely going to be worth the expense to continue to submit for more awards, because it has this, other effect to it. And so even as the individual marketer, I know this is what I'm able to do, with data, and adjust how the tactics and the strategies that I have in relationship to that.
So how many awards have you won so far?
So in total, I've won, gosh, I have to actually count. I've won about 6 awards. 5 of those winning in marketing categories or social media categories. I was a finalist in the business and sales and finance category for the Independent Author Network Book of the Year. But the only time I almost basically have not won one of these is when the book category is not marketing.
Mhm.
For every marketing category
Cleaned
or
house.
social media category, it's one. And and I, some of the ones that I'm really proud of, like the New York City Big Book Award
Yeah.
for 2021, hugely proud of that. The annual National Indie Excellence Award, the International Impact Book Award, just huge competitions. And you can see how many books are, there's the runner up sometimes, there's all, you can just see the plethora of books that are being submitted to all of this, and just the caliber of the judges or the caliber of the competition that you're up against. And so I'm very proud of the response to the book, both from people in the profession of marketing communications that are reading it and going, God, this should be a textbook.
Yeah.
You said that at the beginning. This should be a textbook.
Yep.
It's funny you said that, because one of the Amazon reviews that I just got earlier in the week was that was the first thing that they said was, this should be a textbook in marketing classes. So I have that response from people in the profession, and I'm like, I'm great. This is reaching the audience that I want it to reach, and it's getting the response that I want it to have. But then there's also this level of recognition that it's getting at kind of that national literary world
Yeah.
of being able to say, these are great books, etc.
Well, it's no longer word of mouth. It's no longer being on the top shelf at the bookstore or being on that front display when you walk in. It's about the algorithms, the reviews, and there's multiple sites for reviews now. It's no longer just
Mm-hmm.
Amazon. There's Goodreads, there's, Book Hub, and all these different places you can go. I mean, every place has a review on it, whether you buy it from them or not. You could go leave a review everywhere if you wanted to as a consumer. But
But Amazon's king.
yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to beat that. I mean, but what was it like for you as a marketer marketing a marketing book?
I've spent 15 years in marketing, and this is the first time I've ever had a product that's mine. And I think that brings a new level of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
because it's really, at the end of the day, I'm marketing my book, but I'm really marketing myself. And it's a large, essentially, element of your personal brand, and your professional reputation. There's a lot of new there, where you have to, in some ways, learn what's going to work for yourself and what's not going to work for yourself. I can't post, you know, uh, to LinkedIn or Twitter, quotes from the book or pieces from the book every single day. The algorithms themselves are going to essentially wash that out.
Sure.
But but even my own audiences that I built up, they're not going to want to see that every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's understanding, kind of, as a marketer, whether we're talking it's my own product, or if it was, talking about the work that I do, professionally, it's, well, what's going to work, for the audience, and then at what point does it become spam, or what point does it just become noise or something that they ignore? But what are the things that I'm going to have to do that are going to have the best impact for book sales today?
Right. How can it relate back?
How can it relate back, but what's going to have the biggest impact? Because, budgets are finite, because it's yours. It's your own money
Mm-hmm.
that you want to put behind this. Okay. What's going to be the best use for my dollars? What's going to provide me the best return on investment for that? Which is, again, all marketing decisions that we make. You become your own worst kind of boss in some ways, because you're always kind of thinking to yourself, God, is my website good enough?
Yeah, there's a lot of risk.
Does the book cover look professional? Does this look professional? Is this the best use for, this $100, or this, whatever the investment is, even investments of time.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody who reach out to me. I've had some interest in my book from Canada, and I've, had a few interactions with individuals from Canada, but then I had this interaction, or this request, from um, the Philippines. And I was like, I just don't, I honestly, I had to make some assessments and look at some other pieces of data. I'm like, I just don't feel like that there's an audience over there that I'm going to be able to really, yes, you know, that person had a podcast too,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, yeah, you have this, but I don't really feel like there's going to be the best fit from what I'm talking about or what I'm doing. My audience, I don't feel like is there, and so you have to make again those kinds of decisions as the author, also as the marketer. What's going to be the best use of my time, because I still have, you know, a full-time job.
Yeah.
You know, I still make room. You know, I still have to do the work, and do all this stuff because we don't make money off of these books.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's
um,
a definitely a, one of those things where, and that's something how I've kind of been approaching it is I'm not selling the book, I'm selling myself.
mhm,
I'm selling what all comes with me, and I'm selling, my lifestyle. You're almost selling your lifestyle. Like, what are you about? What are you interested
yep,
in? You have to sell that because, yeah, a book doesn't make a ton of money. But, if you look at guys like, I use Jack Carr a lot. He's a fiction writer. Jack Carr sells books. Jack Carr doesn't just sell books. He has major gun manufacturers that support him. He has coffee companies, clothing. I mean, today he posted online. He has his own little action figure. He's making
mhm,
residual money off of the book. The
yeah.
book is something that everybody looks forward to him releasing every year. And I love his books, but it's one time a year, he drops a book. All the other parts of the year, he works on selling, the trade paperback and the ebook. And then, he has a coffee thing and he has all this other stuff that he's also promoting throughout the year, but he's still promoting himself as a part of it.
Yep.
So when he doesn't have to do, book advertising 6 months prior because he's been advertising who he is all year long. So when it comes time for the book release, he's overly prepared, it seems like.
There's I think that the key here is there's with that and the authors that I follow, and I see how they do those stuff. That there's the product, there's the author, of course, but then there's the product, and then there's the platform.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ryan Holiday, one of the authors that I, admire, and I read a lot of his stuff. He put out a book on called The Perennial Seller, and it's essentially a book on creating, and marketing, creative works. Whether we're talking, and he's a multiple best-selling author,
Yeah.
New York Times multiple best-selling author. Stoic philosophy is kind of his bread and butter, and that's his main area. But some of his first book and some of the other books that he's done along the way have been about, growth hacking. He had a book on growth hacking. He had a book on trust me, I'm lying. Like he's had all of these different types of books on different subjects as well as a Stoic book. Well, he also runs, the Daily Stoic website,
Yeah.
which has a store. He has Daily Stoic podcast. There's, different products, Stoic related products in his store. But also again, he's building the platform that brings in audiences because he's got, he puts out a daily email on Stoic philosophy, and he's been doing that for multiple years. You know, that generates interest, that builds that platform, that brings in an audience, that generates interest in the activities and the other products and services that he offers.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows him to, basically maintain, you're not just living book to book,
Yeah.
or not just relying on, well, I hope this book sells because the last book, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
You're only as good as your most recent one. In his world, he's built more of a platform, the Tim Ferrisses of the world, the 4 Hour Work Weeks, that kind of, the different pieces of their platforms. And I think that's the generation of author that is the most successful, building, the brand for themselves, but more building that author platform for themselves, and they've become masters
Mm-hmm.
at it in a lot of ways. You see it in some points in fiction, but I more gravitate towards the nonfiction people.
Sure.
Struck by, I read a lot of historical biographies, and I was struck by, I read a whole series of Winston Churchill biographies, and I was struck by one of the comments that, in between, when he was running for, when he was in the parliament, you know, his biggest source of income wasn't him being essentially being in the parliament. This was before the war, before he was a prime minister in much, of the beginning parts of his life. He was a writer. He wrote several, dozens of books
Mm-hmm.
and articles and was paid to give speeches, etc. But his family basically was like, they were always kind of worried. It's like, yes, he had a name even before World War II. Yes, he had a name, but it was very much like, well, we hope this next book sells, because this was really that era. Obviously, again, the early 1920s or the 1920s and 1910, etc. They didn't have email. They didn't really wasn't the same kind of like, well, let me send this to everyone who has bought the previous book.
Yeah.
They have to be looking for. He always has to be. So there was always that worry on their levels in the early author stages and stuff like that. Now, as authors, we can ask for an email address, when if they want to buy a copy from us, etc. And you see more of the business writers, and people writing in the nonfiction categories and stuff like that. They'll basically operate the entire. Yes, the book might be on Amazon, but they want to, as best they can, operate the entire element of the business through their own websites, through their own platforms, through their own things, because they're essentially, helping build that database of the next, for the next book and the next book after that,
Mm-hmm.
because that's, that's really the larger piece of all of that, is being able to build that audience. And I think that applies whether we're talking about books, we're talking about shoes, or we're talking about widgets or gadgets or whatever the case may
Oh
be.
yeah.
Building those, building that core audience and creating that audience and being able to grow all of that helps make the next thing you create, or the next service that you offer, or the next sale that you have, whatever, the next location that you open. It always makes that a heck of a lot easier, because you now know where an audience is or what you can tap into in relationship to all that.
So speaking of growth and what's next, the book is like a year old now.
Yes.
Won multiple awards. What's next? All right, we're going to get a Death of Content of King Part 2? What's Jon got on the horizon?
It's a great question. And I don't have all the answers for you right now. But I've been thinking, again, I thought a lot on this subject, and I've been thinking a lot on this subject, probably to, overthinking it in some ways, because the death of content is king, the concept and the idea, the theory, the observation, the research, and all those things, that came to me, relatively quickly. But obviously, the whole process of doing all of it, writing a book is a war against you and yourself.
Yes.
And it's trench warfare. It's inches and miles and words and word counts. And when I think about, well, what do I want to do next, or what's the topics that interest me, one of the biggest ones I have right now out there is the metaverse. This concept of the metaverse. And Facebook just renamed themselves. The Facebook company just renamed themselves into Meta.
Mm-hmm.
And the metaverse, the concept of the metaverse is being mentioned and dropped all throughout there. Now, what interests me about that? I think the biggest thing that interests me about that is, if you had told me 20 years ago that I was going to be able to get on my cell phone the internet, video games, and all of these different types of services and apps, and I was going to be able to order food, not by talking with somebody over the phone,
Yeah.
but through a specialized application on the phone. I was like, yeah, I don't see that. I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
When you think back to when perhaps you were first introduced to the internet and how the internet worked, and kind of trying to grasp and understand the internet before the internet really kind of exploded with America Online and Prodigy and all those, internet service providers, etc. But really, those first introductions to the internet, the first introductions to personal computers, I feel like you're at the age where there was a moment in your life that you were, like you had lived a life before,
Mm-hmm.
and then you were introduced to a personal computer.
Yep.
You lived a life before, then you were introduced to the internet, and then you were introduced to smartphones. There's going to become this time where you're going to be introduced to what the metaverse is. And I wonder if for people of our generation or older, or still even perhaps some younger generations, well, what is the metaverse and why should I care?
Mm-hmm.
And that interests me, because again, why should I care about doing having the entire internet in my pocket?
Yeah.
Why should I care? And some people will get it and some people understand it, and they're the ones pushing towards that. The blockchain, the NFTs, crypto,
Oh yeah.
AR glasses, all these kinds of things that we just hit, that all those pieces out there. But I would say there's 10% of people that understand anything about it, and there's 1% of people that are making it happen or making something new there, and relationship to that. But then there's the rest of us. And I
Yeah.
really am interested in the concept of helping the rest of us understand what the metaverse is.
Okay.
What format that takes or what that looks like, I'm not 100% sure yet. Is it a newsletter? Is it is it a podcast? Is it an ebook? What is it? But it's been an area that I've been talking with a few colleagues and others, where we start talking about the metaverse, and again, there's people who are really into it,
Mm-hmm.
and they really want to start pulling apart different aspects of it and wanting to just chat me up and until my eyes bug out of my head. But then there's also the people who are like, man, I could care 2 cents about this. Yeah, but we used to say that same thing about all those other
Yeah.
pivots and technological leaps. We say those same things. Why should I care about that?
Exactly.
I remember when Facebook first came around, and Facebook was all about college students.
Yep.
It's like, well, I was not in college. I was in the college of the military at the time. It's like, this wasn't for me.
Nope.
I'm not looking for a date. I'm married, whatever the case may be. It's like, this isn't for me. And, but then now can you think of how you're going to interact with friends, colleagues, family, etc., that doesn't exist without Facebook in some ways?
Yeah.
Especially if everybody's living in different parts of the country, and we don't call our mothers as much as we'd like to pretend we call our mothers,
Mm-hmm.
So now we can't think of that world prior to that, but that's what things were. And I think that that's part of what might be coming with the metaverse. Now, I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They could be wrong as well, that it might not be as prevalent or as pivotal as they would like it to be. But I think that it takes that kind of understanding to help somebody understand, well, what should this look like and what does it look like? And I think it takes someone like myself who, or I feel like I want to be the person that does this, and I have an interest in this because, again, I don't have I'm not selling metaverse apps. I'm not selling metaverse products or services or those kinds of other pieces. I'm not anti a company or anti this or anti that. That's like, well, no, they're not the ones doing it right, and these are the ones over there. I don't have an NFT for sale. I don't have any of that kind of, I don't care about what's up or down in the crypto world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not invested in that way. I'm curious.
Yeah.
And I think the best books and concepts in those pieces come out of a curiosity. It's not that I want to write a book because I want to become famous, or I want to write a book because I want to make money, or those are all the wrong reasons, or because I want to get sales leads. Those are all the wrong reasons to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
The right reason to write a book is because you're very curious about something. And not only do you feel like you have something to say, but you feel like what you say there's a validness, there's value. Value, is key to all of that. And I think that's a good reason to write a book and a good reason to explore a topic. And I find value in this topic right now.
That's a very interesting topic, and I look forward to potentially hearing from you about it. If you haven't picked up Jon's book, The Death of Content as King, you should. Even if you're not interested in marketing, it's just a really cool almost kind of peek behind the curtain as to how that works. And it's very interesting. I learned a ton as a business major. I knew some stuff already because you have to understand marketing and the consumers and stuff like that. But to hear it from a marketing expert really drilled down all the way. It's very interesting. I mentioned that it's like a textbook, and it's not in a derogatory way. It's that finite of details and that amount of information. It's fantastic. You absolutely have to go pick it up. Jon, it was a pleasure having you on today. I want to be respectful of your time. I enjoyed the conversation. But this was great, man. Thank you so much.
Jeff, this was like talking to a friend in the room.
Thank you.
This was a great conversation to have. Thank you so much for having me on and sharing, my book with your audience. And I look forward to seeing more from you and hearing more from you. And, obviously, of course, the moment I have something new to share, you're going to be, besides myself, you're going to be the next person to know.
Well, please, yeah, that'd be great. You're welcome back anytime. And again, I thank you so much for coming on.